Like I said, it's your boy Lil B, thuggin'. Like I said, man, shout out to New Orleans, you feel me? Whole 9, you feel me? Holly Grove, Apple and Eagle, niggas thuggin' so fucking hard, yeah. Bitch call me Mac, Maine, riding in that black thing. On a plane, Holly Grove like Mac, Maine, bitches gon' fuck us, bitches gon' rush us. I'm gon' throw a party, bitches gon' fuck me. Gangster like Mac, Maine, legend like Mac, Maine, pistols and cocaine. I don't smoke a thing, rob the drug dealer, come up on 50 bands. Bought a house, then I bust a bitch. Bitch call me Mac, Maine, 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 bitch call me Mac, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac. Bass guy, pull up in that slow lane, 100 grand on the seat. Bitch play that Lil B, still got bitches, nigga. 2014, I'm strapped with that pink shirt, trickin' in person. Bitch, it's Halloween. Trick or treat, I could fuck hoes for free, but that's too easy. Buying pussy, write it off. I'm a boss, salute to Rick Ross. I'ma still boss up, never been washed up. I'm the real cash out, I stay cashing out. 30 for the fucking pussy, 50 for that fucking mouth. I'm the real cash out, I stay cashing out. 30 for the fucking pussy, 50 for that fucking mouth. Bitch call me Mac, Maine, 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 bitch call me Mac, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac, Maine, bitch call me Mac. Bass God. Hey man, shout out to Mac Maine, bruh. Straight up, man, you a legend out here, man. You know what I'm saying? Hey man, you heard that they about to build a wall in Mexico?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Well, we gotta get up out there before they build that goddamn wall, because there's too many girls out there.
I don't got no money for all that.
I don't wanna miss out.
I don't got no money to go down to Mexico. I can't afford it.
But before we go to Mexico, you heard about San Jose?
Yeah, we can go there.
Yeah, it gets real crazy out there.
Let's go.
We gotta go up out there first, and then we'll drive down to Mexico.
Okay.
You with me?
I'm with it, man. Let's go.
Let's go.
I don't give a fuck. Left hand stun, right hand stun. Swipe. Championship ring, and I look like Derek Fisher. Word around town, I got 25 bits, 5 bits on my ring. I got cocaine in that swisher. Fuck around with me, that Mac 11 touch your sister. Real west side the hood, twerk like a stripper. Nigga, I'm connected and I think I'm the mafia. I think I'm Illuminati. Plus I got the shotgun, AK still loaded, got my guns on layaway. 56 hoes suck my dick because I'm Gary Payton. I think I'm Michael Jackson. Every bitch harass me. Tiny ass pants with that chopper for that action. Reppin' bitch mob, cause you know that I'm a killer. Swipe from 3-point and they call me Reggie Miller. Bitches suck my dick cause they know that I'm Miller. Strap with Glock 9s and they call me Reggie Miller.
Swipe, Jerry Rice. I think I'm Jerry Rice. 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 Touchdown, touchdown. 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 I think I'm Jerry Rice.
Ted DiBiase, fucking with a stripper. Bitch pay me stacks, I'm the cocaine dealer. Word around town, I got 5 going for 50. Word around town, I'm in that S550. I think I'm Tyvon Branch because I think I'm on the radar. Vote for Bates guy because I'm running for the mayor. Fuck around with me, bitch, I show you what's player. Guns on the boat and I'm cussing like a sailor. Think I'm Dr. Phil because I'm helping all my bitches. Hoes up my dick, gives a fuck what you feelin'. Yeah, bass guy, nigga swag to the ceiling. Bitch, I Bob Marley, coming with the cockloaded. Baba Watson swag, I put that pistol in the morning. Nigga, fuck with me, I kill that bitch while I'm yawning. Because I know big niggas think that I'm lying. 36 bitches and they call me Don Imus.
Swipe, Jerry Rice. I think I'm Jerry Rice. 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 Touchdown, touchdown. 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 I think I'm Jerry Rice.
Nigga, I ain't trippin'. Bitch, I ain't trippin'. Muzzy both guns and they short like a midget. Bitch, I got swag and I'm still buying bitch. Paying for that pussy every day Christmas. I got money, bitch. Pay a whole rent, nigga, mind your own business. Fuck the in the mouth and that broad ain't trippin'. Slide a whole 20 cause I'm rich and I'm reckless. I'm a real thug, used to ride stolen Lexus. Now I came up in that Bugatti and that Phantom. Nigga, fuck with me, that Mac 11 make you handsome. Pay a bitch 10, I ain't got time for that talking. Young bass god is a young Kenny Rogers. Dying fights I swag and I came with that chopper. Asking questions, bitch, yes, Luke, I am your father. Still got the chopper, still got the AK. Young bass god, suck my dick, bitch, I run again.
Swipe, Jerry Rice. I think I'm Jerry Rice. 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 Touchdown, touchdown. 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 I think I'm Jerry Rice.
This should be played at high volume.
Oh my God, we're in here for the remix. You know what it is, man. It's your boy Lil B. It's that new mixtape. Oh my God, I'm winning. I'm rich now. I can't believe it. Oh my God, Lil B, bass god, swag.
Sheen, winning, swag, 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 sheen, winning.
5150, bitch, fuck with me. Damn, I look good, nigga, swag of the century. Damn, I'm iced up and the girls fuck with me. Fuck a bitch face, man, I'm paying for some pussy, but I'm not no pussy. Bitch, I'm not a rookie. Nigga, I'm swagged up and I'm powered up like Tukey. Don't gang bang, but I fuck the bitch on deuces. Hollering, what's up, bitch? Fuck you hating hoes. Ride through my thing, nigga, 64 show. And that's cause I'm the golden hoe. The bitch know what's up. Paying just to fuck. Fuck her in the mouth, then fuck her in the butt. Damn, I'm swagged up. I'm playing and I'm working. I'm doing dumb shit I would never dreamed of. Scuba diving trips, niggas selling out arenas. Hoes call my phone, I told the bitch suck my penis. I'm winning.
Sheen, winning, swag, 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 sheen, winning, sheen, winning, swag, 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 sheen, winning.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's your boy, Little Boss. Yeah, you know I want your bitch, you feel me? Yeah, yeah. Roddy Piper, I want your bitch. I want her ass. I want some head. I want some cash. I'm gonna Roddy Piper. I'm gonna Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper, Stone Cold Stunner. I'll drive the bitch. No wonder she's thunder. I'm fire. I'm high. No lighter. Yes, baby. Yes, ma'am. Superman at home. Put it in the throat. X-Man. Sex him. Sex me. We're friends. You're cool. I'm cool. Let's swim. Drool on the swipe, and she sucks me all night. Don't bite, don't fight, make love, alright. Just me, am I gay? It's just me, am I gay? I want your bitch, I want her ass, I want some head, I want some head, I want some head, I want some head. I want some head, I want some head, I want your bitch, want her ass, I want some head, I want some cash, I want your bitch, 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 I want your bitch. Fuck that slut, bruh, fuck her like a man should. Get your dick sucked in the back of canned foods. That's waterfront, I'm waterfront, that's my girl. She's a water slut with a deep sex, thin flex, work bitch, I'm next. Punish me, but I'm not bad. Strap that hoe to the wall, fuck her in her ass, cause she likes that. She's a freaky girl, I'm Gucci man. I need a freaky girl, come to my world. Bass world, sex world, flex girls. I'm in the scraper with the two-lag, with the big rims, the jacuzzi, smooth ass, sucking boobies, fucking groovies. I'm a rock star, making movies. I'm a cock star, no homo. Fuck bitches, all day man. Fuck bitches, threesomes, bad bitches. Goddamn. I'm a pretty bitch, just met her right now and she sucked my dick. Crucifix, I'm a bass guy. I want your bitch, I want her ass, I want some head, I want some cash. I want your bitch, 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 I want your bitch. It's just crazy.
I just wanna be bass. Shouts out to Drake and Trey Songz. Yeah, Drake, I fucking feel ya. I've been grinding in the hood since I can remember. And would've thought I gave up with the bullshit, but lions don't stop, they hunt down what they supposed to. See me in the jungle, my terrain with the Pro Tools, and I was in the hood while you was shopping at Whole Foods. I left the mark with old dudes, I really peep game, I understand what I'm supposed to. I really say what's good from the heart, I'm being honest, but people look at me like a $sign comment. That makes me think about the underlying drama, but this girl's really tripping, saying she my baby mama. I'm not the baby's father, but I still got a conscience, so I gotta be honest, I might be the baby's father. I gotta step up, but so hard to get tough. Here's a tip, I gotta be a man and grow nuts. Goddamn, being honest with yourself is so hard. Sometimes I'd rather be in jail, but that's copping out, because this game I call life ain't no ways out except life. Because even when you die, no telling when you go, so might as well live life and see the places you can go. I'm going for the gold and I'm aiming for the sky. Completing life mission, that's the way to get high. I just wanna be bass. Yes. I just wanna be bass. Most of all, I'm living off energy. Funny when they help, but they really be your enemies. I can say this cause I was fake once too. Interracial bars, my raps never cease to amaze you. Grace through, run with the pad like God with the Bible, led with the graphite. You can say you don't understand what I'm talking. Only legends do, because my mind is in the ocean. I'm stuck in the coffin, I can't hear your comments, I can't see you, and I'm just being honest. So if I ever said your name, shit, you better be on it. Until then, I'm on a mission for $1 million. Until then, I make 1 million fans screaming holler. Little beat for little boss, want the money and the power. Grind never stops, so I'm working every hour. And I just want the sex, so the money like a shower. I just wanna be bass. You know, that's all I want. Lil B, I'm the rawest rapper alive. I'm signing out, but I'm never leaving. I just wanna be bass guy. Berkeley, Bay Area, West Side, California, the whole world. I just wanna be bass for life. 6 Kiss.
It's your boy Lil B. I got my game from South Berkeley, man. I got my game from Richmond, man. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. Niggas get locked up every day. Crackers get shot up every day. Free all my niggas that's in the cage. I'm feeling like I'm on stage. I'll never be a snitch if we in a raid. You should lay a person down for saying names. I never point the finger, that's not a game. If you was a snitch, you should be ashamed. I got paperwork for all my cases. I took an oath to the street, I'm a 80s baby. You niggas really on Instagram. I'm at Fruitville Bar with a kickstand. I'm one up and you one up. Hit Eastmont Mall for the double up. Nigga, I only stay facts. Got the ladder and the drum with a A's hat. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. every day, I don't give a fuck. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. I'ma keep it 100, bitches no love. I'm the boss so you know that I'm turned up. Hit you where it hurt, knock off your fam. Back to your kids on Instagram. DJ Vlad, keep your mouth shut. I don't do interviews, shut the fuck up. Hey, quit talking, man, I'm just trying to see a key. I cut the whole rock like Jay-Z. I took losses as a kid, but I bounced back. Yeah, I'm still sick, and I deal with that. Yeah, nigga, I'm a black man. Used to deal a car with a black hand. Everything that you not is what I am. I'm the son of Dez, nigga, not the son of Sam. Smoke one for the real niggas, and smoke one for the real bitches. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. I'm about everything, nigga, even Jonesin'. Pull up by myself, nigga, you ain't knowin'. I'ma go a couple places and take risks. I ain't got no friends, nigga, fuck a bitch. Keep it 100, nigga, talking tough. But really, it ain't nothing. What is it, a blizzard? I really got the game from these South Berkeley niggas. Feel me? But we rockin' off the top like. And we never did stop like. Shout out to rich men on the top like. Yeah. Worldwide we on top right. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck. I don't think you niggas know about the back streets. I don't give a fuck no more about the enemy. My eyes red cause I smoke blunts. Niggas die every day, I don't give a fuck.
Goddamn, I'm still struggling. After all these years, I would've thought, goddamn, it came up. But I ain't gonna lie, I'm still on my dick. And I'm feeling like I'm about that Yeezy, bro. I ain't gonna lie, I'm yakking, bro. I ain't gonna lie. Goddamn it, nobody got cash. Jay pockets crushed. My pockets crushed. I'm bad on my luck. I'm down on my ass. Goddamn, I'm thinking about that flash. My life's in a flash. I got the world on smash, but I'm not eating. God damn it. Like I'm supposed to. I'm finna go out this evening and show up. I'ma be the center in the hood and post up. I'ma be the engine in the hood. Turn up. Summertime. Everybody wanna see me burn up. I'm looking like college, so y'all better learn up. I don't fuck with you, they leave you bloody. I'ma tell you like this, I ain't gon' funk for the money. Money tight, but ain't gon' stay where it's at. You only see green, that's why your soul turn black. Whatever that means, I'ma tell you like this. Bass starts to exist, I'ma serve you off the rip. I'ma tell you like this. Coolie kid. Down for the Coolie kid. Down for my team. Coolie kid. Down for the world. You know I talk green. We move the same thing. We do the same shit. You can fuck my bitch. I'ma tell you like this. Shut up. I'm happy for you. I don't care. Pat you on your back. Shut up. I don't care. I'ma pat you on your back. I got bitches. This hard life. Get off me. Gon' fuck my bitch. Get off me. Lil B, tell it all. I'm taking more shots in the game than I'm supposed to. Doing more things in the game than I'm supposed to. I'ma tell you like this, pussy. We ride around with that chopper. Pass it. I'ma tell you like this, pussy. What? I don't fuck with none of them bitches on the field like my people with them pockets. I'ma tell you like this, Woody. I lost money before. I'ma tell you like this, Woody. I had to jump way back in. I gotta bounce back again. Who wanna see me win? I don't think nobody do. Nobody do. Fuck 'em. Got cash. Nobody got cash. My pockets crushed. J pockets crushed. I'm down on my luck. Shit. Nobody got cash. God damn. J pockets crushed. God damn it. Damn it. God damn. Green flame, trials and tribulations.
We can go down, alright. We can go down, alright. We can go down tonight. We can go down, alright. Down, 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 all night.
Man, I see that John, baby, it's so vicious. She got 2 sis, I want 2 bitches. I'm in that thing like Mr. Clean. Her body so nice like a limousine. I stutter dreams, make her Gucci clean. I'm Brad Pitt, I'm David Blaine. It's our world, we could take a plane. What I want, everything.
We can go down, alright. We can go down, alright. We can go down tonight. We can go down, alright. Down, 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 all night.
I love my life, I'm in a good position. I ain't got no car, but I be driving bitches. My girl look like lemonade, like kiwi, lingerie. I like that, yeah, high heels, make me scream. Oh, I'm here, yeah. I'm in her mouth, I'm in her brain. She says I'm not the same.
We can go down, alright. We can go down, alright. We can go down tonight. We can go down, alright. Down, 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 all night.
Yeah. I'm saying we in this thing. It's your boy Lil B. I said, West Side boy, I be going dumb. I'm going cellular. I be blazing blunts. Better fuck me fast or fuck me slow. Where your bitch at? Got an ice cream cone, girl. I'm so cute, can I bring you home? Huh. Yeah, girl, I'm so fine, don't leave me alone. Don't make me cry, don't make me cry. I want your face between my thighs. Better tell your friend to tell your wife. Boss here, can I spend the night?
We
Yeah.
can go down, alright. We can go down, alright. We can go down tonight. We can go down, alright. Down, 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 all night.
Hey, Nakia, man. I'm making history, man. It's your boy Lil B. Bay Area, stand up. All the sexy ladies. Shouts out to 5 Star. boy Lil B. Hey, check my story out. You know what I'm doing when I get up, I'm out of here to see my baby, you knowing that we out of here. Let's go to Paris, I never been, supposed to go, but never win. I ain't lying, I really like to go when I see stop signs. She playing kid games, I'm a grown man, a young man with a grown woman. In my eyes, her mind like home cooking, all real. Baby, what you thinking? Give me a hard deal. Shit, I don't wanna play it back, I'm giving all real. And that's really on my mind. Had me thinking for a second. Everywhere I go, I see a mind well respected. Show my direction, stepping with perfection. Told her I ain't guessing, I'm here for the answer. She looked me in my eyes and said, B, I got cancer. Oh my God. Make sure you loved your loved ones, man. Cause you never know where they lead the earth.